Unconditional love is like fertilizer and good soil to a relationship. It allows us to grow. It allows the love to grow and cultivate and get bigger and better as time goes on. We shouldn't be loving our spouse or significant other the same way we did when we first met them. It should be completely different. It should be completely other by the time you put in 10, 15, 20 years. Our relationship should have grown drastically. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the FCS Prep Podcast, where I am your host, Dr. Keith Fairclough, and we are back again. Guys, I apologize about the long hiatus. I've been working on some different things, different projects in the background, trying to build my business, get that stabilized. I have a new card game that I just was able to get created to help couples with their relationships. It actually feeds pretty well into this next series I'm going into, because guess what? We're going to be talking about how to start applying these principles that we've been learning this past year, right? We're going to learn how to apply unconditional love, personal responsibility, and excellence to all these different areas of our life, right? I know before I would use different examples with relationship, with business, with work, jobs, family, things like that. Now we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty. What does unconditional love look like in a relationship? What are some things that we need to look out for? Why is it necessary? We're going to look at how personal responsibility plays a role in it. Some how excellence plays a role in it. We're going to be talking about all these different things that have to do with relationships regarding unconditional love, personal responsibility, and excellence. And today we're actually going to be talking about relationships and unconditional love. But before we get any further, you already know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Get this information out there. Someone's going to need this information. It's going to help them in their relationship, maybe save a marriage, maybe give someone a good foundation as they go into relationships, maybe help someone find some love for themselves, right? So go ahead, make sure you share this now, and listen, let's go ahead and get into it, all right? Let's get into it. Unconditional love, what is that? It's the ability to be heard, validated, and understood regardless of what you have going on in your life, right? It's the ability so we're not being judged, right? Or we're not judging somebody or expecting someone to live up to some type of standard. It's us not turning a relationship into a business contract where you will only give love if someone fulfills XYZ protocol or whatnot, right? That's what unconditional love is. I'm not going to go too detailed and into talking about that, only because we have an entire podcast, a whole series that goes into unconditional love, why it's important. We have the communication and everything like that. So take some time after this, go back, listen to those, watch those, apply to your life. Then you can come back here and see how it all fits together. But unconditional love is critical for relationships, right? Because when we're talking about dealing with other people, having the unconditional love, creating that safe environment, right? Being able to hear, validate, and understand someone is very important. And it does help to cultivate healthy relationships. But when we're talking about trying to find someone you want to spend the rest of your life with, it's that much more critical. Because guess what? There are lines that can be crossed in a relationship that we cannot cross with a friendship or a family member or a coworker or a friend or whoever, right? There are certain lines that need to be crossed. And what I'm talking about is intimacy, right? And I know I mentioned before that unconditional love doesn't necessarily mean intimacy, but in this case, it leads to it. It creates it, because what we do when we're able to hear, validate, understand our partner is we create a space that's safe for them to be themselves. We create a space where it's okay to be vulnerable. We create a space where it's okay for them to be accepted and just share and be who they are naturally without having to put on, right? They're able to share exactly what they have going on in their mind and their heart. We need this in relationships. It is critical to have this in our relationships. I would dare say there cannot be growth. There cannot be a positive relationship if we don't create that space for our significant other and for our spouse. And obviously, if you're dating, you're not going to be just open willy-nilly the entire time, right? You're going to build up to that. But if you are married, there should already be that space. You should have worked through that, through the dating process, till you got to the point where now husband and wife can now be open and share without fear of being rejected or without fear of being put down or ridiculed. Now, of course, you're like, probably, oh, Keith, you know, the divorce rate here, at least in the US, is like, what, 60-something% or something along those lines, you know? So obviously it's not happening. Yes, I know it's not happening. happening, right? That's why I'm putting this together for those who might be thinking about marriage, considering marriage, or possibly are married, right? It's because even if you are married, it's not saying you can't fix things and get them back to where they're supposed to be, right? There might be some hurts and some past traumas and things like that, either in the marriage or outside the marriage, that might hinder you from opening up and being truly and completely and open and vulnerable to your spouse, right? And we can talk about that a little bit, but let me get into a little bit of why unconditional love is so critical on a more granular level. Because here's one thing. In a relationship, you gotta have growth. I'm a firm believer we're either growing and getting better or we're decaying and getting worse. But there is no staying the same. You ever hear those marriages that stay the same or the relationships that stay the same? Something ends up happening, right? They hit a wall and it's like, I don't even know you anymore, right? How does that happen? How do two people who fall in love and then spend the next 10, 15, 20 years together get to the end point and say, I don't know you anymore. I'm going to split off and go find and do my own thing. That's a problem, right? There's got to be growth. Unconditional love is like fertilizer and good soil to a relationship. It allows us to grow. It allows the love to grow and cultivate and get bigger and better as time goes on. We shouldn't be loving our spouse or significant other the same way we did when we first met them. It should be completely different. It should be completely other by the time you put in 10, 15, 20 years. Our relationship should have grown drastically in that time. And that's what unconditional love allows relationships to do, because what it happens when people can be heard, validated, and understood, and we can communicate properly using I statements, it allows us to share and to grow and to learn about each other. And as we're both growing as individuals, we also then start growing as a couple, and it's an exponential growth. So it's critical for growth. It's critical for growth. It's also critical for trust. The next reason why unconditional love is so critical to a relationship is because it's necessary for trust. You cannot have a relationship if there's no trust. Imagine this. Imagine you share how you think or how you feel about something that's important to you to your significant other, and they just shut you down or they don't listen, right? Are you going to trust that person with something even more serious? Are you going to trust that person with your deepest, thoughts and emotions and feelings? Of course you're not. What kind of relationship can then grow from there, right? Going back to growth a little bit. You got to have trust. Trust is the foundation of every relationship. If you don't have trust, you don't have a relationship, and it's critical. So if there's been some type of travesty in your relationship, some type of affair, or some type of deep-seated hurt, or maybe you tried to open up and they, just kind of shut you down, or they didn't listen, validate, or understand you, or even try to, then I strongly, strongly recommend that you guys start working towards forgiveness and reconciliation, right? Because if not, that relationship is doomed to failure eventually. There's got to be trust, because again, you're either coming together or you're growing apart, but you can't do both at the same time. You can't stand in the same place and run a race. You got to move. So trust is built when we're able to communicate, when we're able to listen, validate, understand. Not necessarily agree, but listen, validate, and understand our significant other. And they feel heard, and they feel safe, and they're not torn down or ridiculed, or there's no sarcasm or anything when they share how they think or how they feel. That creates a safe place to open up and to be themselves again. And unconditional love does that. This is why it's so critical to have that unconditional love in your relationship, because it's foundational to help build that trust. Health. Why do I even say health, right? So it's important because there's all these studies, and I don't have all the studies or whatnot, but people who are able to share and be themselves and experience love, real love, unconditional love, tend to be healthier. They tend to be healthier physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. They just tend to be healthier. Why? Because negative thoughts, negative feelings, ridicule, sarcasm, hate, arguments, all that stuff, that has a lot of bad things that happen, that creates a lot of bad things that happen in our body, in our mind, in our thought process, in our attitudes, that negatively affects us. If you want to get like spiritual or energy or vibes or things like that, you send that stuff off. And if you're continuously sending that stuff off all the time, it's going to tear your health down. That's what happens in a lot of relationships when people are not heard, validated, and understood. A lot of times people get into arguments and they're not even arguing about the same thing because they're not listening. She's talking about one thing, he's talking about another thing. They're yelling back and forth and sending arguments and insults and all that stuff back and forth, getting absolutely nowhere. And then when the dust settles, they make up, but the problem was never resolved. And God forbid there are kids in that. And we know, studies show that kids that are in these combative relationships tend to not to do as well as kids that are in healthy relationships, where their parents are in healthy relationships, where the parents are creating that safe space, right? Because I can guarantee parents who don't know how to love each other unconditionally are probably struggle to do the same thing with their kids. Because guess what? If you're not going to be willing to hear, validate, understand your spouse, then there's a strong possibility when there's that power dynamic, between a parent and a child, that you're not really going to take that time to hear, validate, understand your child. You're just going to say, do as you're told, stay in a child's place, blah, 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 which creates an unhealthy relationship with them. And it's just not healthy across the board, right? So for our health purposes, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, it's so important to have that unconditional love, to hear, validate, and understand one another. And of course, this kind of goes without saying, intimacy. You need unconditional love for there to be intimacy, right? It's very difficult for a woman to give her body to her man when she doesn't feel safe with him. It's very difficult for a man to want to be intimate with his woman when he doesn't trust her, when she tears him down, when she's combative. Very difficult. That stuff kills intimacy. But I'm going to tell you what, if two people, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend shouldn't be having intercourse before marriage, but that's a whole other topic. You might think, oh, you're throwing that Christianity stuff in there. I mean, it's part of that, but even beyond that, that's not a good thing. But again, we'll talk about that in another episode because I have a lot to say about that. But in a relationship, in a marriage, right, where two people are going to be intimate, it's so much better. It's so much better when you can truly, fully be open and free with that person. She can give her love freely. He can give his love freely. There's no bound. It enhances because it's not just a physical thing. And a lot of people think, that sex is just a physical thing. It's a mental thing. It's an emotional thing. It's a spiritual thing. I know society has downplayed it to just some cheap thrill activity. I'm telling you, when you do this right, when you do it right, when there's unconditional love, when the people in that relationship are heard, validated, and understood, when you know your wife better than anybody else, when you know your husband better than anybody else, when you know things about each other that no one in the entire world will ever know. Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, it takes your intimacy and it takes it to a whole nother level. Like levels that you've never seen before. Pleasure you've never experienced or will never experience. No drug could do it. No cheap thrill can do it. No porno could do it. Nothing could do it. I'm telling you, that's the power of unconditional love in a relationship. It is so powerful and just critical for intimacy, friendship. Oh my God. I mean, and it all fits together. You're probably, and some of these things are gonna be like, duh, but yeah, of course, the person you're closer to and closest to is gonna be a better friend than someone you're not as close to. The person you feel safe to open up to and joke around with and laugh with, you're gonna be closer to them than somebody who you're always fighting with, or someone, even if you guys don't even like the same things. The fact that you have that level of openness with each other, it allows you then to explore new things. You might find something, maybe she doesn't like anime, but maybe she sits down with you because she loves you, and maybe she finds an anime that she likes, and you guys are able to watch that together. Maybe she has a show, that she likes to watch, maybe a Lifetime or something like that, and the guy's like, I don't really like that stuff, but because he loves you and he's interested in you and he knows you, maybe sitting down, maybe he gets into that type of stuff, right? And enjoying it with you. It builds that friendship, right? So even if you guys don't necessarily have a lot of the same, likes and activities or whatnot, you can still build a strong friendship through unconditional love. And of course, that enhances intimacy and growth and everything else. Like all of these things work together. And the next thing, unconditional love. Listen, if you can communicate with your spouse, if you know how to use I statements, if you're able to listen, validate, and understand, it's going to be so much easier to resolve conflict. I would dare say, if you're able to do this the right way, you may not even have conflict. You might have discussions. You might have disagreements. You might be able to, say, hey, listen, I hear you out. I hear what you're saying. This makes sense. I've confirmed it with you. I really just still don't agree. I still think it's ABC. right? That you might not even have conflicts, and you might even have these discussions in front of your children so they know how to manage conflict, so they know how to have a disagreement with someone without getting emotional, without yelling and screaming and throwing stuff and running away and making insults and cussing and all these things like that. All these dysfunctional ways we've learned to have conflict. That's what unconditional love can do for your relationship. That's why it's so important in a relationship. Oh man, that's powerful. Imagine having a relationship where there are no more fights. There is no more arguing. There is no more name calling. There is no more dragging each other through the mud. There is no stonewalling. Imagine that in your relationship, and that can come through unconditional love, creating that safe space for your spouse, and your spouse creating that safe space for you. And the last thing I want to touch on, because I don't want to go too long, I do have some more stuff, but I don't want to go too long, and we already got a little bit longer than I would like. Boundaries, protection. We've talked about this in another video. You can go ahead and watch that, so I'm not going to go into detail, but unconditional love is going to create those boundaries for your relationship so you guys are protected and you guys are safe. Oh man, how powerful is that? That no one can get into your relationship and mess it up. No woman on the outside, no man on the outside, no in-law on the outside. Nobody can come into your relationship and mess it up because you guys have set up strong boundaries. You guys know each other. You know, oh man, she's starting to get upset, man. Let me pull her out of there, right? Or let me step in and say, hey, you know, you're not going to talk to her that way. Hey, you know, it's getting to be too much or whatever. She can step in and be like, oh man, he's about to lose it, man. Hey, listen, hey, babe, let's get out of here. Hey, you're not going to talk to my husband that way, so on and so forth. Like, there's a protection that happens because it's like, I don't want to see my significant other going through this thing that they're going through. And I'm going to intervene because I know them. I'm going to set these boundaries up. And I'm going to say, hey, you can't talk to them that way. You can't treat them that way. You know how valued that would make someone feel? You know how powerful that would be? It's like, dang, they got my back. Even if you're wrong, you know, it's like, okay, dang, I know she's wrong. She out here, you know, saying the wrong thing. But let me pull her out. I'm not gonna try to correct her in front of other people. You know, I'll talk to her when we get home where there's that safe environment. But when we're out here, nah, that's mine and I'm gonna protect mine. That's what unconditional love can do. Because you're not gonna want to see your spouse fall. You're not gonna see them get attacked. You're not gonna see them get torn apart. You're not gonna let your mom, oh, you know, I can't believe you like him and this and this and that. You're gonna be like, no, you're not gonna talk about my spouse that way. You know, and vice versa, like on any side, you're not gonna let anyone talk about your spouse any kind of way. You're not gonna give them that space or that freedom to just have their way and just talk about it and, you know, and forget. I know this culture is, and respect your parents, man. When it comes to your spouse, no one is above your spouse. I'm gonna say it one more time. You know, try to be culturally competent and all that stuff like that. But I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no relationship on this planet, no mom, no dad, no kid, no job, no boss, no friend that is above that of a spouse. Period. End of discussion. So there's no one that should be able to come at your spouse sideways and you just let it slide. All that being said, guys, we're gonna wrap it all up. This is why unconditional love is so critical for your relationship. This is what it can do for your relationship. If you're finding that you don't see this in your relationship, or you're struggling to see it in your relationship and you need help, please reach out. That's what we're here for, right? We're here to help you. Remember, FCS is improving the world by improving you. FCS Prep is real change right now, and that's what unconditional love can do for your relationship right now. It can provide real change right now and send you guys on the path to happiness, to freedom, to love, to change, to success. Oh man, it can do so much for your relationship. So guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please look down below, man. You can reach out to me anywhere, man. I'm all over the place. I'm not hiding, right? You can reach out to me on my website, on social media, through email. You can reach out to me anywhere, right? So if you need help, reach out. If you need therapy, we can do that. If you need coaching, we can do that. If it's couples, we can do that. Hey, whatever you need, we got you here at FCS, right? Y'all take care. Have a great, awesome, and blessed day. I'm glad to be back, and I'm looking forward to putting out more videos for you guys.